Hello and welcome to this guide, which is mainly going to be focused on the build I'm using in the solo Endless Archive as sort of an one-bar Oakensorcer. And what this build is basically a variation of the classic Oakensorc build that you have seen from a bunch of YouTubers. And basically what this build is meant for is to clear Arc 4 and get our achievement. That's kind of the point of this build. So I'm going to be presenting two builds today. One is the one I'm using and one is one that's also good, but mainly it's a set that's I believe, going to be probably the most popular set in Endless Archive in the future because it's very, very, very strong. It's not so necessary on this build, and I'm going to tell you why once we get into the video, but that's sort of what this video is going to be about, and then some tips and tricks for sort of grinding the Endless Archive. First off, I want to say if you're focusing on trying to get through Arc 4 in the Endless Archive and you have not done your VMA, so you're trying to go for this Endless Concrete achievement, if you've not done VMA and Veteran Hollows, I'm not saying you have to get the no death achievements, but it's probably a good idea. You should do those first. And why is that? Well, that's because the Endless Archive, you have only 3 lives. Arc 1, Arc 2, take about half an hour, 45 minutes, depending on how fast you are. Sometimes a little bit shorter, sometimes a little bit longer. And then you only have 3 lives to sort of train on, which means that the same mistakes that kills you in VMA and kills you in Veteran Hollows is going to kill you in here. But you're going to be using orders of magnitude more time trying to learn this in Endless Archive compared to VMA. Because if you die in VMA, you revive, you go again. And you can have endless lives in there, and you can take 1,000,000 attempts on a boss if that's what you want. You only get 3 lives, sometimes 4 lives if you buy a bonus, sometimes 5 lives if you're lucky. So you don't get a lot of attempts, and it doesn't make sense to train these things if you're also struggling with them in VMA and Veteran Hollows. So once you've done Veteran Hollows and you've done VMA, then you can start progressing the Endless Archive solo. If you don't want to do that, then I recommend you try and do the Endless Archive in the duo form, because it's a lot more forgiving and you will see a lot more people getting the achievement through that. So once this is out of the way, what is the build? What's the idea? So the idea is that it's basically a variation of the classic one-bar build. So the one-bar build that we typically use, which will be some sort of combination of Sergeant and then some other sets mainly wearing medium armor, is just not gonna cut it inside this place. And why is it? Well, Eternal Archive is very different from all the other scored archive content in that it's not time-based. So you don't need to kill things within a certain time frame. There are still DPS checks. Some people will say there are no DPS checks. There are still, so we still need damage. Damage is also important because else you have a good chance of being overwhelmed by ad spawns. So there's definitely checks on your damage, but the content is tuned more towards being tanky, and for this reason you also take a lot more damage. So while in Arc 1 and 2 you can get away with medium armor, Arc 3, if you're a very good player, you can probably also get away with mostly medium armor. Once you get to Arc 4, you need heavy armor. And how many heavy armor pieces do you need? Well, I like to run with 5. And basically the other set besides Sergeant I like to run with is Order's Wrath. Why Order's Wrath? Well, Order's Wrath has a lot of critical chance, which is very nice for a sorcerer trying to heal with crit surge, and has critical damage, which we're going to be lacking. We're not wearing medium armor. Plus it has critical healing. Now, I recently made a video saying critical healing done is probably the worst stat in the game. Well, on a solo build, only having one source of heal, there's a good chance you're not only going to be overhealing with this critical healings. And for this reason, I really like this set because it's very stat heavy. Talking about stat heavy, a lot of the builds you're seeing on Oakensorc is using either flame or poison or some sort of enchant. You want weapon damage enchant. Why do you want a weapon damage enchant? Well, a weapon damage enchant is not going to do as much damage as the proc enchants, but you get the bonus of weapon damage doing damage and weapon damage enhancing your self-healing. And for that reason, weapon damage enchant, very important on your lighting stuff. You also want precise and not sharpen. Why do you want precise? Well, you want to heal yourself. You heal yourself every time you crit, and you want to buff your critical chance up as much as possible. For that same reason, we are also using Thief. So our critical chance is pretty phenomenal. We're sitting at about 52%. So that's really nice. The same reason we're using Slam Crow. Why are we using so many reinforced pieces? Why are we using reinforced on head, shoulders, chest, and legs and feet? So it's only really the two small pieces in the middle we're not using reinforced on. Well, the reason for that is armor. We are sitting on a ton of armor. 21,000 spell resistance, about 28,000 physical. So, ton of armor. Why is armor so important? Well, the idea with the Oakensorc build is basically that you crit your crit search up, you keep your dots down, and then you shield between heavy attacks, which means our primary form of mitigation is our shield. So, why is the armor then so important? Well, if you block with a shield on, like this, you're still going to take full damage on the shield. So the block mitigation is not going to stop the damage that comes toward the shield, but the damage mitigation from a spell and physical resistance is going to work on the shield, which is really, really nice. So our primary form of mitigation is our armor. Blocking is not going to help us as much. And that's basically it for sort of the armor pieces. There is basically just these two sets, and it's something that most people have seen before. But there's something more important, our champion points. So if we go into the champion point 3, you'll see that I'm using Weapons Expert. Very important trait, huge damage increase to our Oakensorc build. But the rest of these blue CP are different. We're using Ironclad to help direct attacks. This is the primary form of attacks that you're going to take in there. You're going to do this with buff. Again, single target. You're mostly going to get light attack, DC and swing, so single target direct attack abilities on you. This also reduces bleeds. And there's a heavy bleed in there from one of the Marauders, which are the most difficult bosses. And then we have a sort of CP that most people probably didn't know exist. From the Brink. Whenever you grant heal yourself under 25% health, you get a damage shield. You get an 11,000 damage shield if you go below 25% health. This has saved me numerous amounts of times, especially against the Marauders, because you're going to take incredibly amount of damage in a very short amount of time. Your crit surge is going to heal you basically constantly, and this shield is enough to save your life. It's 11,000 is not a joke. The reason it's 11,000 is because we're using Bastion. So moving on to the red CPs, it's basically what you would expect. Celerity, we're using heavy armor. We need this movement speed, or else we're going to be a lot slower than that. Bastion, again, we're shielding. Fortified, and then Boundless Vitality. These two, you could probably swap out if you prefer some dodge roll CP or something. But that's basically it for the CPs as well. We're going on to only one damage CP. The rest is basically mitigation. Again, if you have the money for it or you have the CP, you could probably use damage CPs for the first two arcs. This build is mainly focused on surviving third and fourth arc, which is what people are struggling with. So that's basically it for the build. And now I'm going to talk about the other build and the other set, which I mentioned earlier, which is a set called Ravaging. So Ravaging is stat-wise a very, very, very powerful set. The reason why Ravaging wasn't so popular before this patch is that it's heavy. But because we're intentionally wearing heavy armor, then suddenly Ravaging makes sense. The only reason it doesn't make so much sense on the Oakensorc is because we already have a heavy piece in the Sergeant's Mail. So we can wear Sergeant's Mail, and then we can basically wear any other set. I'm using Order's Wrath. In 2-3 weeks time, someone's probably going to say, hey, this set is a lot better than Order's Wrath. Order's Wrath is, I know, is probably not the very, very, very best set, but it's good enough. But for sort of any other build, especially including the Arcanist, Ravaging is a very, very nice set because it gives basically 600 weapon and spell damage at incredibly high uptime. Plus it's heavy, so you can use it with something like Azure Blight. So you imagine Ravaging, Azure Blight, you have a incredible combination of damage and mitigation because you're wearing heavy armor. So this set is going to be probably one of the most expensive and best sets to use in Eternal Archive, and I just want to put it in this video so that people know about it. So something quick, the reason we're not using pets is of course that the pets tend to die in there. So that's why we've swapped away from the pets. And I have two setups. One is for bosses, which is where we use elemental. And the second one is for trash, which is where we use caltrop. So that's why you've seen both in this video. And a quick disclaimer is that the focused effort trait inside the archive, once you get some buffs, it's up to a 500% increase in damage. And in that case, you probably want to swap your weapon and damage enchant for a fire enchant. So that's just a quick disclaimer before the end of this video. A very important thing to do between rounds, so once you've died 3 times, is to go and pick up your leads. You'll drop these leads in Apocrypha once you're in the index archive, and what you get is that you get the currency. This one's only 250, but you can get thousands of currency from just going up and picking up these leads. So what I do is I park a character in Apocrypha, and then once I wipe, well, I'll go pick up this lead and I'll get some bonus currency. That thing has to do with the third boss fight. So when she does the shield, what you need to do is do a damage stop. She also says things like, how patient are you and how long can you wait and so on. So there's a voice indicator saying that it's a damage stop. But a lot of people don't seem to have gotten that. So if you just don't do any damage to her, doesn't matter if you have ground dots. So any damage you sort of add on top after, then she'll just stop what she's doing and go back to attacking you. So this is how you get through the shield. Don't sit and attack her while she's doing the shield. And that was basically it for this video, and thank you for watching.